So, we're going to begin our coverage of the end of the New 52 Superman. Yes, you heard that right. The beginning of the end. See, at the tail end of the New 52, DC gave us this storyline right here called Superman Before the Truth. And this was a very interesting idea. And the reason why, because when it came to the New 52, it was supposed to be a reboot. Now, most parts it was, and other parts it wasn't. But when it came to the New 52, it did have some good stories, but it did have some bad stories. And matter of fact, there were more bad than good. But with that being said, when it came to the character of Superman, well, DC tried their best to bring back fans to fall in love with the character of Superman by doing all these different kinds of events like Hell on Earth, Superman Doom, Krypton Returns, and the list goes on. Unfortunately though, most of those events, or really all of them, did not really hit as DC thought they would. And so when it came to the tail end of the New 52, they were wondering, hey, what can we do with the character of Superman? And they said, hey, what if his secret identity gets out to the entire world? How can we take this idea and try to make it into some kind of interesting storyline? And so you had DC say, yeah, you know what? Go for it. Try to give us a storyline where his identity is out to the world, and how will he manage the idea the world knows that Clark Kent is Superman. And really, this leads into the actual end of the New 52. Not all the way, but right to the last story where we see the death of the New 52 Superman. And so this was really his last big, oh my God kind of story in the New 52 era of DC Comics. And so here is Volume 1, Superman Before Truth, where his secret identity is told to the entire world. And when it comes to this storyline, we also get reminded that at this point, Superman just got a brand new power. And that brand new power was the solar flare. Now, when it comes to the solar flare, it is really more of Superman releasing a huge amount of energy. And when he does that, he is completely drained. What I mean by that is we have to remember, Superman is a solar battery. The yellow sun is the reason why he has powers, but at the same time, it keeps him charged up so that he is able to use those powers, except when his cells are completely absorbed sun energy, but when he uses the solar flare, his cells are completely drained of solar energy. He is technically powerless until the sun is able to recharge his cells. And he learned about this power in a previous storyline that we have not covered yet. But in that storyline, that was when he was able to figure out, oh my God, I have this ability called the solar flare. But the problem is though, he has no idea how it actually works. He does know if he does use it, well, of course, he is almost completely drained. But the problem is though, he has no idea how to activate it and how crazy it can get. Because you are talking about the idea of releasing a huge amount of energy. And when you do, how much damage can you do by doing that? And that is the question the Justice League has for him. Like, hey, when you do it, how much energy are you throwing out? And you have the league ask another question, which is, hey, you know, when you do a solar flare, how long does it take until your powers come back? And really, that is a very good question to ask. And the reason why, because if Darkseid comes to Earth and they don't have our boy Superman there to help them out, they are going to lose that battle. Or really, if any other powerful being that is close to the same level as Darkseid comes to Earth, they are going to lose that battle quickly because they need Superman's help. He is their strongest character. And so their question is very valid. Like, hey, how long does it take until your powers come back? Because when you do a solar flare, your cells are completely drained, which means that you are unable to use your powers until they begin the process of recharging. But at the same time, when you are recharging, what powers do you have? And what powers don't you have? And how strong are you? How fast are you? There are so many questions to ask him. And so that is why you have the league say, you know what? We need to do a test. And really, when it comes to a test, it's honestly not a bad thing to do. Because with this test, you are able to learn a lot more about him and his solar flare. At the same time, when it comes to Superman, he also wants to know more about his solar flare, how the trigger works, and how much power he can use when it comes to the solar flare. Because he tells us there's sometimes the solar flare is so powerful, it can do some serious damage. But at the same time, it's not that powerful, but it still could do some damage, but not on the same level as, a superpower solar flare. And so he says he's trying his best to understand how to control the solar flare and when to use the solar flare. Because if he does use a solar flare, he's powerless and he has to make sure it's the right time to use it, or if he does use it in the wrong time, he could most likely be killed off in some kind of way because he'll be powerless. And so we see the league be able to test him and learn more about his solar flare and how he's able to trigger this solar flare. Now, after their test, you did have our hero say, you know what? It's time for a bonding session. Let's go down to Earth and let's have some dinner and some drinks. And we're able to talk more and bond more, but at the same time, discuss the idea of how your solar flare truly does work. When our heroes go out for drinks, they do talk more about the solar flare. Now, Cyborg, unfortunately, did not join them from drinks, but you do have Cyborg call in. And he says, when it comes to Superman and his solar flare, that he's able to charge up the entire world, that they have a solution to fight against climate control. They have a clean way to give energy across the entire world thanks to Superman's solar flare. And so if they're able to find a way to just channel that energy and turn it in a way where it becomes energy before the entire world to use, it will help the world so much. But also for Superman, his mind is that with this solar flare, they'll be able to go up against some more powerful cosmic beings. Now, in reality, he's right. They could. But at the same time, he's wrong, because if he does use it in the wrong time, well, then he puts his team in the worst position because they didn't lose their most powerful character. Either way, you do have Clark get a tad bit drunk because, again, he did do a solar flare when he came to the league doing a test on him. And so because of that, when he's drinking, he does get a tad bit drunk and he does pass out. And you have the league take him back home to his apartment. Now, once he's able to overcome his hangover, well, we dive into what I say, the beginning of the end for Superman, or really the beginning of his secret identity getting out to the entire world. And the reason why I'm saying that, because when it comes to Superman, when he wakes up, he hears that there's trouble going on in Metropolis. And he realized that with him being the hero of Metropolis, he should be the one to handle that problem, which he does run off and try his best to handle that problem. But the thing is, because he used a solar flare earlier when it came to the test the league had gave him, well, he's not at full power. Matter of fact, he's at a weaker state. And the reason why, because his cells are still recharging after he used a solar flare. And so he's not back at full power. And when he runs into the actual problem that's going on in Metropolis, it's a bunch of guys who were able to get their hands on some high-tech weapons. And unfortunately, it does some damage on Superman. Now, once you have our hero jump in, take the hits, and realize that sooner or later he needs to handle this problem, he goes ahead and tries to use the powers he has to handle this situation. But he was barely able to actually defeat some thugs that had some high-tech weapons. Thugs that he would usually be able to handle in a matter of seconds. But again, his cells are drained. He's still recharging, and so he's slower and weaker. But when he tries to fly away, somebody gets a picture of him. And this is why I say this begins the process of the end of the new 52 Superman. But at the same time, it begins the process of him going through the idea of the entire world finding out that he is Clark Kent. Because when he tries to leave, he's leaving very slow, very weak. And the public realize there's something wrong with their hero, Superman. And with the public wondering what is wrong with their hero, well, it gets played across Metropolis, because not just one person realized, hey, there's something wrong with Superman. Matter of fact, you have a lot of people in Metropolis realize there's something wrong with Superman. Like, what in the world is going on with our hero? But here is the thing, because when he goes back to work at the Daily Planet, and when he walks by Lois Lane, she realized that Clark looks hurt. And the thing is, so does Superman right now on the video footage that's being shown on television. And so this also begins the process of her wondering, is Clark Kent Superman? And so getting into the actual before the true storyline, well, we see Superman wearing just some regular clothes, but he's on an airplane right now. And you're wondering, why in the world is Superman riding on an airplane? And so we have to jump back before everything has changed. And so when we jump back in time, we pick up with Superman getting ready to leave work with his boy Jimmy Olsen. And apparently they're gonna have some nachos for the night, for the big game. Except that is when you have Clark get a text. And when it comes to this text, it's really them saying, we have a big story for you, but you have to follow all my instructions to be able to get this big story. And we come to find out that apparently in Metropolis, somebody has been selling a lot of advanced technology weapons. And matter of fact, we saw that in the last chapter. And so right now you have this person telling Clark, if you want to find out who's doing that, but also give you the chance to show the world that you have the biggest story for Metropolis, you need to follow my instructions very carefully. We did jump over to two guys at a random factory who are beginning the process of trying to make a deal. Now, when it comes to these two guys, one of the guys is actually a general, but not for America, for another country. But the other guy, we have no idea who he is. But apparently, he is the one who is making these advanced technology weapons that are being sold across Metropolis, but it also seems across the world. And so right now, you have the general trying to get his hands on some advanced weapons. Now, while you have the two guys begin the process of trying to make this deal go through, well, we see Clark and Jimmy hiding out in a different part of the factory and being able to get some information about this deal. And once they're able to actually publish the story, it is going to ruin this general's career, but also this random guy career as well. But also the world, what's happening right now in Metropolis. There's some guy in Metropolis selling a bunch of weapons. Except while you have Clark and Jimmy trying to gather enough evidence, well, they're caught by some security guards. And that leads into Clark turning into Superman. Because we kind of find out when it comes to the guy who's the one making all the weapons, he's using a 3D printer. And with him being able to use a 3D printer, well, he's able to make so many different kinds of weapons. But once he finds out that Clark, who's right now Superman, is in his factory, he tries to use the robots as a way to take down Superman. Now, Jimmy knows that Clark is Superman, and so for Clark, he has no problem changing into Superman and taking down all these different robots as a way to save his life, but also Jimmy's life as well. But at the same time, they're still able to say, at least we got a story before I destroy this entire factory. And once he does destroy this entire factory, they do go back to the Daily Planet. But the problem is, though, it's the way he did destroy this factory, because he had to use a solar flare. And let's not forget, a solar flare leaves them powerless for a certain period of time. And so when Clark and Jimmy arrive back at the Daily Planet, well, they begin the process of trying to put together the actual story, because they have a huge story to tell when it comes to the idea that a bunch of weapons are being made in Metropolis. Except when they do arrive back at the Daily Planet, well, they run into Lois Lane, who's right now wondering what are the two guys up to. Now, after a couple moments, she's able to come find out the two guys have an exclusive story about what happened to the factory that blew up in Metropolis. But at the same time, she does help our two guys figure out who is the guy who was the one making all the weapons. And apparently, it's a guy who just became a brand new senator in the city or the country. Who knows what area. Either way, he is a new senate, and he's the one making all the weapons that are being sold in Metropolis. And so you have Lois feel like, because she was able to figure out who was the mysterious guy making all those weapons, well, she has right to Jimmy and Clark's story. And so you had the three guys begin to work together to put together the actual story. Now, after Clark, Jimmy, and Lois were able to put together their story and show Perry what they got, well, Clark gets another text from the same person that had just helped him find the bad guys who were making the illegal weapons in Metropolis. Now, when it comes to Clark, he has no idea who this person is. And matter of fact, he tells the person, I need to know who you are. But the person says, no, I would not tell you who I am. And matter of fact, you have Clark say, well, fine. If that's the case, if you cannot tell me who you are, then we are going to end our conversation. Except that is when you have Clark realize this person has some very valuable information about him. And the information is that they know that he is Superman. And so he begins to freak out, and he realizes that he has no choice but to follow all the directions until he's able to figure out who this person is and to stop that person before they're able to reveal his secret identity. Either way, you do have our mysterious person tell him, you have to stop a random blue-haired girl from ruining my plans, because right now she is about to come into the Daily Planet, tell you some kind of story to ruin my chance in what I'm trying to do. All you have to do is give her over to the FBI. And once you do that, then we can move on to the next step. And so you have Clark run over to Jimmy. And this is a good reason, because Jimmy is the only person in the Daily Planet who knows that Clark Kent is Superman. And so it's Clark wondering, hey Jimmy, did you tell anybody that I am Superman? And Jimmy says no, because Jimmy knows how important it is to keep Clark's secret. And so he says, no, Clark, I would never tell your secret. Now, right after Jimmy does that, well, The blue-haired girl that our mysterious character was talking to Clark about does appear in the Daily Planet. And right now, she is talking to Lois Lane. And once you have Clark walk up to Lois and our new mysterious character, we come to find out her name is Condessa, and apparently she has something very important to tell both Clark and Lois, and also Jimmy, because apparently what she's holding could save a lot of lives. But right when she says that, the FBI walk in, and you have Clark do what the guy told him to do earlier. When the FBI walks in, make sure you hand her over to the FBI. And he did that. But right after he did that, he realized that he may have just made a huge mistake. And so he says, I have to save her. I have to technically get her away from the FBI to figure out what in the world does she know. And so you have Clark begin the process of trying to save Cortessa. The thing is, he still is depowered, not completely depowered, but his cells need to be recharged. And so unfortunately, he can't really go in there just as usual. He has to be somewhat more careful, but at the same time, he's not being careful. It's kind of like he has to understand what his body can do and can't do when his cells are recharging. It's all about learning the limits of his abilities when he's right now trying to be a hero after using a solar flare. Because we do see him try to save Cortessa's life, and you do have the FBI agents shoot at him. It does lead into a whole situation where he does get hurt. He does begin to bleed, and he realized that he's not as durable once he does a solar flare, because again, his cells have to recover. Now, once he's able to save Cortessa, he does meet up with Jimmy Olsen. The problem is, when he does meet up with Jimmy Olsen, well, Lois Lane's in the car because she saw Jimmy just hanging out and wondering what in the world he's up to and why he's parked there for no unknown reason. And so once she sees Clark and also sees Clark is bleeding, but with Cortessa, she realized that Clark just broke her out of FBI custody. Either way, you have him say, we gotta get out of here right now because they're after me and her. And so you have Jimmy leave. But now Lois wondering, what in the world did Clark do? Why in the world Clark just free this random woman for? And so when we jump into the third chapter, we pick up with Cortessa, Jimmy, Lois, and Clark going somewhere else to discuss what she's holding, what kind of information that she's holding on to. And she says that she used to work for a group called Horridor. Honestly, I hate the name a lot. But what she says is that when it comes to Horridor, what they do is that they sell information. But when it comes to gathering information, they try to get the ones that are worthwhile, knowing that it will make a lot of money. And so that would make a lot of sense because remember, our mysterious bad guy could be working for Horridor as well and trying to use the information on Clark, say, hey, I know that you are Superman, as a way to make some huge amount of money. And so while you have Cortessa trying to explain more about this new organization known as Horridor, well, you didn't have a bunch of random robots appear right behind Cortessa, Lois, Jimmy, and Clark. And Clark realized he has no choice but once again to protect his friends and also Cortessa, but he has to use his powers in front of them. And that is a legit problem because when it comes to Clark, yes, Jimmy knows that he is Superman. But with this being the new 52, Lois has no idea that Clark is Superman. Once DC did that reboot, they said, hey, they are not going to get together. But on top of that, she has no idea that he is Superman. But this is the moment where she learns that he is Superman because she's watching him just take out the guys left and right and showing how strong he is, how fast he is. Now, he's still not completely powered up, but he's doing just enough for her to realize, oh my God, Clark has powers. Oh my God, Clark is Superman. And right after you have Clark being able to save Lois, Jimmy, and Cortessa, Lois realized Clark is Superman. And this is huge because at first it's her just saying, I'm a dummy. Because all the different times, the way you had reacted when it came to Superman's name being mentioned, or how you disappeared, or when you came to work injured, or when you came to work just kind of too happy, or sad, depressed, literally all the different kinds of clues were there, laid out in front of me. And I realized that you are Superman. And she rips off his actual t-shirt, whatever, to reveal his Superman outfit. And this is a huge moment. But Lois is angry because in the New 52, her and Clark were supposed to be close friends, maybe best friends, but not boyfriend and girlfriend. And matter of fact, Homeboy is dating Wonder Woman in the New 52. But either way, she's very upset because Jimmy knows, but she did not know. And she felt like Clark does not trust her enough to keep one of his biggest secrets in the world. Either way, you do have our heroes ask Cortessa, how can we find Horridor? Who's in charge of Horridor? And she says, listen, the person in charge of Horridor is a guy known as Horridor Root. He's the one in charge. But the only way they're able to get onto the actual base of Horridor, they need to have some kind of access code. And when it comes to the access code, well, Cortessa only has one. She needs 3 more. One for Clark, Lois, and also Jimmy. And so she says, once we're able to get copies of my past to help you guys get onto the headquarters or the campus for Horridor, then you'll be able to go after Horridor Root. And so we see our heroes pay a visit to Hiro Okamura. Hiro is actually one of the many Toymans in DC Comics, and he is the smartest child on the planet Earth. Either way, when it comes to him, he should be able to make our heroes 3 more passes to give all 4 friends the ability to access the headquarters that belongs to Horridor. And really, in one single page, he comes right back out and say, hey, here's your 3 new passes. Everybody should be able now to access the island or the headquarters of Horridor, and hopefully you guys be able to take down their boss. And we didn't get the chance to see how advanced Horridor is, because when our heroes are able to get on the school bus or regular bus, I want to say school bus, but when they do get on the bus begins to take them over to the actual headquarters of Horridor. And when they arrive, they realize how advanced this place is. But at the same time, it makes sense because this is supposed to be a group of people that is able to gather information about different people and then sell that information to get some money. And so once our heroes arrive, at first, it seems like they do fit right in. But then out of nowhere, you have a hologram appear. And when it comes to this hologram, well, you have Horridor Root appear, the leader of Horridor. And when he does appear, he begins to give his daily speech to the people that work for him. And when it comes to Horridor, he literally right off the bat says, hey guys, usually when I appear, I try to give a powerful speech to motivate you guys. Unfortunately, we have 3 friends right now who are intruders on our place. And that would be Lois Lane, Clark Kent, and Jimmy Olsen. Not Cortessa, because she does work for the group. And so her pass is the original security pass. Either way, with their covers being blown, Clark realized he has to protect Jimmy, Lois, but also Cortessa. And so he grabs them and just takes them to a different part on the island that belongs to Horridor. Once they get inside the building, well, you have Clark, Lois, Jimmy, and Cortessa realize that, yeah, Horridor does have a lot of information to use on Clark Kent to show, yeah, man, we know that you are Superman. There's no point of hiding it because with you trying to hide it, we have all this evidence to show that you are Superman. But while our heroes are looking over the evidence, well, then they're confronted by Horridor Root. And with them being confronted by Horridor Root, of course you have Horridor Root say, listen Clark, or Superman, the reason why I've been testing you or watching you and trying to learn more about you because I'm trying to figure out if you're going to be a great fit for our organization, which this does make sense because Clark is a reporter. And when it comes to being a reporter, your main goal is to always find the evidence, the proof, to prove that something or someone is doing something in the city that you work for. And so when it comes to Clark, it makes sense for him to join an organization like this. People going out of their way to collect information on different people. But at the same time, Horridor is more about the idea of selling that information. With Clark, when he does get information about something or someone, it's to prove they're evil or something bad is happening in Metropolis. There's a huge difference between Horridor and Clark. Either way, you have Clark say, no, I am not going to stand here and let you be this evil person that hurts other people. But then we come to find out Cortessa this entire time has been working for Horridor Root. And so the whole idea of the FBI being after her, yeah, that was fake. It was just a way for Clark to get involved and to bring him here to hopefully be recruited by Horridor Root or to be stopped and defeated by Horridor Root. Either way, you have Clark say, Lois, Jimmy, and Cortessa, really Lois and Jimmy, get out of here. I'm bringing the entire place down. So while you have Clark fighting against the army of robots that was sent by Horridor Root to stop him, you have Jimmy and also Lois have two different things happen to them. So while you have Jimmy trying to get out of the factory or the actual Horridor base, he is confronted by Cortessa. And she does tell Jimmy, I'm not completely evil. And matter of fact, yes, I was helping out Horridor Root, but I have my own plans. You're left to wonder what is her own plans. Now back to Lois Lane, she was able to sneak up behind Horridor Root and try to knock him out. Unfortunately, when he does reveal his face, it looks like a young child. But the body he's using right there is not even a real body because it completely disappears. And so Lois was unable to actually grab Horridor Root to learn more about who he is. But getting back over to Clark, Clark realized that the only way to bring down this entire headquarters, this entire base, is to use a solar flare. But that's the problem right there, because Clark has not fully recovered after the last solar flare. And so his cells have not been completely recharged. And so with him doing another solar flare, it is only going to make things worse. But the reason why he's doing that is because he's being overwhelmed by the army of robots that work for Horridor Root. Because again, he has not been completely recharged after the last solar flare. And so when he does this solar flare, he does bring down the entire building. Except when Lois, Jimmy, and Cortessa, when they find him, he's one, naked, but two, he is literally knocked out. He is completely knocked out. And that shows how much energy is being drained from his body when he does a solar flare. And so getting into the next chapter, you have Clark wake up. And when Clark wakes up, he is confronted by Lois Lane next to him. But he realized that one, he is naked in bed. And two, she's also in bed with him. And so he does freak out a tad bit. But then he realized that, okay, nothing happened. But on top of that, what happened to me after the solar flare? And so you have Lois say, hey, listen, the last solar flare you did, it knocked you out. It completely drained you. We had to carry you here, put you in a car and get you over here so that you're able to rest. Now, when it comes to Jimmy, he's all like, yeah, she's right. Like the last solar flare, it did something to you. You were completely drained and completely knocked out for hours. Now you have Lois walk out the room to make some food for everyone, but after she does that, you have Jimmy go over to Clark. And the reason why, because Jimmy feels like it's his fault that Horridor knows the secret identity of Superman, because he feels like maybe he went out there one day and he may have said something that Clark is Superman or Superman is Clark. Either way, he feels like that he may have slipped out the idea that Clark is Superman. And so with him saying that, you have Clark kind of like, dude, there's no way. It really seems more of Horridor just figured it out because of me going slower, or just them watching me very closely. Like, their whole goal is to get a ton of information to sell. And so, of course, they work very hard to get me, because I'm one of the heroes, probably the most hero, that people wanted to know my true secret identity. Now, after Jimmy and Cortessa walk out the room, it leads into a conversation between Clark and Lois. And when it comes to this conversation, it's really more of Lois going to Clark and saying, hey, you know, I realized something, because I remember what my father and Lex did to you when you first appeared in Metropolis. And this is her reminding us some pieces of the origin of the new 52 Superman that was written by Grant Morrison in Action Comics. Either way, she's saying, listen, I remember what they did to you, how horrible it was. But I want you to know, I'm nothing like my father at all. But on top of that, I realize what is the right thing to do here. I am going to keep your secret. You can trust me. And really, this is a great moment, because when it comes to Clark, he was very worried about the idea of telling Lois, because he felt like Lois might use his big secret as a way to tell one heck of a story so that she'll be able to do some great things in her career down the road, or to help save her career. And so to hear her say, I'm going to keep your secret, for Clark, this is an amazing thing. That means now he can trust her, and hopefully they can work together once again. We then jump over to the bathroom with Jimmy Olsen and Cortessa, and the reason why, because Jimmy feels a tad bit sick. And so we see him throwing up in the bathroom. And you have Cortessa being there, being that good support, and really, this is kind of showing us that maybe Jimmy and Cortessa might get together. But while you have the two characters walk out of the bathroom after Jimmy had thrown up, well, something jumps out of the toilet. Some kind of small robot. And that small robot is really important. And the reason why, because while you have Lois and Clark hanging out in the bedroom, talking and just becoming good friends, or possibly more than friends, well, then you have a small robot appear right in front of Lois and then take over her phone to show us that, hey, Horridor is not done with him just yet. He's all like, listen, you may have destroyed my entire base, but I kept backup of very important files like yours. And so don't believe that your secret is okay now. No, I was able to keep backups of that secret right there. And so if you don't want the world to find out that you are Superman, you are gonna do what I asked you to do, which right now I want to meet with you at this one location. So go ahead, come over here and we can meet. And you better come here, because if you don't, the entire world is gonna find out. Now, Lois feels like he should not go, but for Clark, he has no choice, because right now, if he doesn't, the entire world is going to find out that he is Superman. And so you have Clark say, come with me, Lois, because while I keep them busy, I want you to sneak around and find a better way to shut them down once and for all. And so once Clark and Lois arrive at the base of Horridor Root, you have Clark be taken away by some robots, and of course Horridor Root as well, to go ahead and see what he actually wants from Clark. But then you have Lois being left alone, which is honestly not a problem at all, because her goal is completely different from Clark. Her main goal right now is to figure out how to shut down Horridor Root, but to also make sure that Clark's secret does not get out at all. And so while you have Clark being with Horridor Root, you have Lois being able to sneak around the actual facility. But while she is doing that, she's finding a lot of different projects or experiments that was done by Horridor Root. She even finds a dead body. But then she realized what she has to do to free Clark, but to also help Clark be the one to shut down Horridor Root completely. And so we jump over to Clark and Horridor Root. And when we do, we kind of learn a tad bit more about what Horridor Root wants from Clark Kent. And apparently what Horridor Root wants from Clark Kent is to learn more about his solar flare. And that is very important because it seems like a lot of people, good guys, bad guys, and the public, they knew a lot about the powers of Clark Kent. Like, hey, we need to have flight, super strength, all those different powers. But we had no idea that you were able to do a solar flare. And so Horridor Root wants to know more about this solar flare. And so with that being said, he tells Clark, I brought out these robots and they are able to absorb a lot of solar flare energy. And so with that being said, I want you to go ahead and show me how powerful your solar flare energy is. Now, he does not tell Clark the reason why he wants to know more about the solar flare. He just says, I want to learn more about it. And at first, you have Clark say no, because Clark's kind of like, I'm done playing your games, I'm going to shut you down. But then you have Horridor Root say, if you try to attack me, innocent people are going to die. The ones close to you are going to die. So you better go ahead and do what I asked you to do so that they can live. And you have Clark realize he has no choice. And so Clark does use his solar flare. Now, while he does use his solar flare, you have Lois Lane walk out and say, Clark, you can stop and go ahead and take him down. And the reason why? Because I told the entire world your secret. The entire world knows that Clark Kent is Superman. You're kind of like, why in the world would she do that? But in her mindset, it was the only option that she could do. And the reason why? Because then Clark can no longer be controlled by Horridor Root. Now he can go ahead and take down Horridor Root and his entire facility. But you now have Clark being very angry at Lois Lane because now the entire world knows that he is Superman. And he says, you had no right to share my secret. It is my secret. And you promised me that you would keep my secret. And she's kind of like, I had no choice. I saved your life and possibly the others as well. You're now a free man. But it's Clark saying, you now put everyone I care for in danger because now the entire world knows that I am Superman, which means that my bad guys will sooner or later come after you and the rest of my friends to get to me. And right after he says that, General Lane appears, Lois Lane's father. And when he does appear, let's not forget, there's bad blood between him and Clark. And of course, he's kind of like, hey, Clark Kent, Superman, you are under arrest by the US military. And he comes out almost full force to try to arrest Clark Kent. And when we jump into the final chapter for Before Truth, this proves what Clark meant earlier to Lois Lane, that his life is technically over. And the reason why, because when we jump into the final chapter, there is a time jump. And we see Clark trying to live a quiet life, a quiet Clark Kent life. But unfortunately, he can't do that no longer because the entire world now knows that he is Superman. And so while you have him just walking around town, minding his business, he is attacked by the Royal Flush Gang. And when it comes to the Royal Flush Gang, they're not really that popular in DC Comics. I mean, thanks to Batman Beyond, they have begun to pop up even more than they did before the actual TV show. But because of the TV show, you do have these characters pop up left and right. And usually you have different versions of these characters. And matter of fact, when it comes to the New 52, I want to say this is the third version of this team. Either way, they go after Clark Kent. And this shows that Clark can no longer have a private life, a quiet life, because now everyone knows that he is Superman. And so you have Clark have to be Superman and take out the Royal Flush Gang, and he does. And really, that trend continues because we pick up with Livewire. And Livewire, one of those characters that got really popular in the Superman animated series, but unfortunately in comics, she never got that popular. But the problem is she's going after somebody not really close to Clark Kent, but Clark Kent knows that person because they work together at the Daily Planet. Either way, with him knowing this person, now his life is in danger because you have all these bad guys going after people to just get to Clark. And so that is why Clark was so scared of the idea of the world finding out that he is Superman, because now people close to him are being attacked. They're being hunted down to hopefully get to him. And so you have Clark being able to take down Livewire. And the thing is, this person right here is not that close to Clark, but at the same time, they still got hunted by a bad guy to get to Clark. So what happens when it comes to somebody who's really close to Clark Kent? And so we jump over to Lois Lane and her father, General Lane. And when we do, this is really more of the general not realizing why Lois did what she did. What I mean by that is, when it comes to the general, he feels like the reason why Lois told the story about Clark Kent being Superman was to get a great story. Probably the best story in a very long time. But the thing is, the reason why she did that was to help Clark Kent out when it came to defeating Horror. And that is very important because to the general, he's like, dude, you should celebrate. You have the best story of all time right now. You told the world the true secret of Superman. That is a great thing. But in her mind, it is not a great thing. Either way, you do have the news right now reporting that apparently the Daily Planet has been taken over by a different set of bad guys. And so when it comes to Livewire, Livewire was just one bad guy. There are others in there who had taken the entire staff of the Daily Planet as hostages. And so Clark Kent is trying to save all his co-workers, Perry White, Jimmy Olsen, and the list goes on and on and on. And this is another example of the idea of why it's such a bad idea for Clark Kent's secret to be out there. Because now everybody close to him is being attacked. And matter of fact, you had this random bad guy who gets mad at Superman because of one of the past battles that he was involved in. And what I mean by that is, Superman had fought against a lot of different bad guys in Metropolis, out of Metropolis, across the world, whatever. But apparently, this one particular bad guy who knew Clark so well, but he also was mad at Superman. And the reason why he was mad at Superman is because when it came to one of his battles, this guy's wife died. And so because of that, he blamed Superman. And so when he found out that Clark Kent, the guy that he was working with, was actually Superman, he said, I came here to get my revenge against you. Because of you, I lost my wife. Now, you have Clark being able to stop him, except the guy had a gun, and he used that gun to try to hit Clark, but unfortunately he missed Clark and shot Perry White. And so Perry White, Clark's boss of the Daily Planet, has now been shot. And Perry doesn't die, but here's the thing, because with Perry getting hurt, it shows what happens to people who are close to Clark. And matter of fact, you're going to have people begin the process of moving away from Clark because they're afraid of getting hurt. And so you have Clark kind of like, hey Perry, I heard you got shot. Oh, I saw you got shot, and I want to make sure you're okay. But you have Perry say, dude, get out of here. Like, it's thanks to you I got shot. It's thanks to you that your co-workers got hurt, or kidnapped, or held hostage. It's all because of you. You have to realize, with your secret being out there, you can no longer have a private life, a quiet life. The entire world knows who you are. So get out of here. Stay away from us so that we will not be harmed because of you. And so you have Clark meet up with Jimmy Olsen. And when they do, this is really more Clark trying to record a message. And his message is going to be played across the entire world or really Metropolis. Either way, when it comes to this message, it's Clark saying, listen, I know that everyone knows that I am Superman. They know Clark Kent is Superman. Here's the thing. I'm not okay with people coming after my friends and family. And so this is only your warning, your only warning you're going to get. If you come after anybody that's close to me, I will bring the hurt right back to you, but 1,000 times worse. And so this is your only and final warning. Now, after that, you then have Lois confront Clark. But let's not forget, right now between the two characters, Clark is mad at Lois because she did share his secret. And so it's Clark saying, listen, I realize I'm going to have to operate in a different kind of way. But at the same time, in that basement, when I use my solar flare to show Horridor Root what my new power can do on his robots, I realize something happened to me. I'm not getting all my powers back like I should. And that is a problem. And so most definitely, I'm going to have to operate differently if I still want to be a hero. You have him fly off, but it does show that right now between him and Lois, there is a lot of bad blood. But we then pick up with Horridor Root one last time. And when we do, we see them right now going to an undisclosed location. And we come to find out that Horridor Root has transferred his mind into a new body. But he talks with his assistant Yuri about being discarded by his father. And he's trying to prove to his father that he can live up to the family legacy. As he opens up a gate, we see some mysterious shadow creature. And we have no idea what this creature is. But you have Horridor Root says, I promise I am going to turn Superman onto our side to help us remake the world for our cause. And the last page really shows that Clark Kent and Lois Lane are no longer on the same page, are no longer friends. And the reason why, because a couple of days have passed by and you have Lois being able to find Clark at a motel. And she wants to make sure that he is okay. She wants to help him by giving him some cash or give him some food. And he says, go away, because it's your fault what happened to me. You told the world my secret. You felt like it was a great idea to share my secret because you thought you were actually helping me. But in reality, you're only helping yourself. And she admits that she should have found a different way. But the thing is, she did not. And so this shows, did she truly care for Clark's secret, or did she use Clark's secret to help her career? And this is where we are going to end today's comic book video. So please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, I'll see y'all next time. Later.